Hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name is Connor. Today we are going to be reviewing the Death of Hope trailer, War on Sathas. My name is Connor. I run this YouTube channel called Counterpoints. You're watching it. I am a former law enforcement officer of 4 years, 3 years on the road, 1 year in the schools, former Marine, 4 years as a POG, person other than Grunt, deployed 0708. Have lots of interesting stories, not as interesting as everybody else, but that's pretty much it. And I like to think that my cumulative experience informs my perspective on violence. So, I'm also a massive sci-fi and Warhammer 40k nerd, and that's why we're reviewing this trailer for your and my enjoyment. Let's do it. Alright, since the battle at Calth, the sons of Angron and Logar launched a bloody crusade through the Eastern Galaxy, carving their way through the 500 worlds of Ultramar, so continues the death of Hope. So, the Battle of Calth, my Horus Heresy is a little bit weak. That's because I've read like the first 5 books and then haven't brought myself to read the other ones. But it's a very good series. Quality does kind of vary author to author, but if you want to read about how the Imperium of Man was attempting to be forged and then kind of floundered in that attempt, and this birthed the demons and the Space Marines and the Chaos Space Marines and the forces that we know now 10,000 years later, in the 40th millennium, then the Horus Heresy is very informative about how these things came to be. Calth is a planet, to my understanding, in the realm of Ultramar. Ultramar is a realm of 500 worlds run by the Ultramarines. It is one of the few functioning, in the 40th millennium, it's one of the few functioning places left in the Imperium, because half to a third of the planets are, in existential warfare at any given point. But it wasn't always so. It was often thought of as a peaceful, functional, bountiful, logistically incredible series of intersolar human conquest and unity. And that's what the Emperor was impressed by when he came and found the realm of Ultramar, was that there was a fledgling human empire that was doing well, and he found one of his sons, basically in a position of power to continue ruling that realm. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, what happened was Horus Lupercal of the Luna Wolves turned traitor, started worshiping the Ruinous powers, and sparked a civil war that was caused by the sons of Angron and Logar. Lorgar Aurelia Logar, I want to say Lorgar Aurelian. One of his lieutenants, Erebus, was corrupted by the Ruinous powers and then started corrupting everybody else, and that's kind of how the rot started in the Imperium. Moving on. Music's fucking great.
They will answer for this.
All right, let's pause. What have we seen? Oh man, we got a new detail that I didn't even notice. This is fucking awesome. All right, so what did we see? We saw an Ultramarine looking up in the sky saying they will answer for this. And this is part of the shock, because it was actually previously inconceivable that Space Marine would ever turn traitor and that Space Marines would ever fight Space Marines. But with the surprise attack launched by the Chaos forces in the Isfahan system and then their subsequent campaigns, Space Marines are now fighting Space Marines. And there was actually a tradition, as far as I read in Wikipedia and Lexicanum, that Ultramarines didn't just conquer. They were also some of the best at creating and maintaining livable civilizations in their wake of conquest. And what they would leave on certain planets are called praetors, and they wear specific armor, which we'll take a look at in a second. And the praetors basically helped in the administration, maintaining the peace, raising the armies, being political consultants. They were, 7 foot tall, genetically engineered super warriors wearing ceramite plate and carrying bolter weapons. But they were also diplomats, and they were also, consuls for the realms that they were a part of. So that was kind of the cool thing of what the Imperium to be could be. So the Thunder Warriors, which was you should go watch my, Marine Explains the Emperor of Mankind. But the Thunder Warriors were a genetically engineered group that conquered Terra, but they had genetic and mental deficiencies, so they were butchered by the Custodes, which is the Emperor's personal guard. They were butchered at the last battle of unification on Terra. And there's kind of a theory that since Space Marines are warriors without peer, but nonetheless warriors, that what would effectively happen is once the Space Marines had served their purpose, they would retire and die, or also be butchered, and basically flung out of existence, at which point the maintenance of the Imperium of Man would be left to the people themselves, the Imperial Guard, and also the Custodes, which is the Emperor's personal guard. This was just like a theory that I found in a lexicanum. I wouldn't take it too personally. But if you look in this background, we have dropships, likely world eaters or word bearers. World eaters being the sons of Angron. The basically imagine like Roman barbarian slave fighters. That's what they are. They're melee specialists and butchers. And then the sons of Lorgar, the word bearers, which are evangelical Baptist priests who carry bolters and shoot the fuck out of people. And now they worship demons, so that's not good. And then this actually was a detail that I've watched this trailer like half a dozen times. And this is a detail that I didn't notice. I believe this is the outline of a Xiphon. Xiphon, which is a advanced fighter from the days of the Horus Heresy. It's actually beautiful. It looks like a Battlestar Galactica Viper. It has 2 twin las cannons on either side, and then it has a missile rack on the bottom. It's actually beautiful. I paid an obscene amount of money just to get one myself. And yeah, that's fucking cool. I love Xiphons. I think this project is suspended indefinitely, but at the same time, while he was doing work, he was doing some beautiful animations. So let's keep it moving. Let's get some pause going. So if you see white and blue, that's going to be world eaters. And they were butchers before they ever turned traitor. They were kind of the attack dogs of the Imperium. If there was worlds that needed to be brought into compliance and you didn't want to leave very many people alive and you wanted to massacre the civilian populations as an example to the others so they could fall in line, you would call the world eaters. The word bearers, on the other hand, were known as like fanatical spreaders of the imperial truth. So similar to the Ultramarines, they were the people who would create and maintain societies that would actually last the test of time. But what was found and ignored by the Emperor of Mankind for a while was that they had discovered the powers of the warp. They had discovered things that maybe they should have known. They started worshiping the Emperor as a god. And they started creating a cult, which rather than the imperial truth, which is atheism and secularism mixed with a pan-human project of space empire, instead of spreading the imperial truth, they were spreading a new religion, that the Emperor of Mankind was the one true god of humanity, and he needed to be worshipped as a deity. When the Emperor found out about this, he actually razed the city of Monarchia, and that was one of the holiest sites for the word bearers. And so they actually gave, I read up on this later, they actually gave civilians time to evacuate the city, but there were zealots who stayed behind, and the Ultramarines did butcher any of the zealots that stayed behind, if I read the article correctly. And then the Legion was humbled. The word bearers were humbled by the Emperor of Mankind, brought to their knees in a comment, according to them, by the sheer psychic will of the Emperor of Mankind. After that humiliation, they decided, well, fuck it. We're not going to worship the Emperor of Mankind anymore. But we do know about the warp, and we do know about the powers of the warp. And we have been offered by the deities of the warp immortality, power, the ability to rule the galaxy that we have fought and bled and died for. So as a result, rather than conquer the galaxy for these weak insects known as normal humans, we will conquer it for ourselves and spread the new truth of the ruinous powers. And what was actually interesting is the cult of the Emperor that the word bearers had originally started took off and is now the foundations of the I forget what it's called, but basically like the church in Warhammer 40K that worships the Emperor now, that is quite powerful, is actually was founded by the traitors. So just get into a little bit of details. So we did see some slaughter of civilians crawling away. We saw a cultist in tow with some of the Chaos Space Marines. We now see that we have demons on the Pauldron. We also see these jetpacks. I believe these are called Raptors, at least in the 40th millennium. They're called Raptors, the Chaos Space Marines that have jetpacks, and they're basically brutal melee units that come in close using their jetpacks and then tear you to shreds with, chain swords, spears, axes, and bolt pistol fire. So moving on.
These traitors know no bounds.
They were my...
All right, here we go. All right, and then I believe these are... This looks like the armor of the Victrix Guard, but I believe this is actually the army of the Praetors. I believe that is their armor. So these are the people that have been left behind in order to help secure the rule of the Ultramarines.
They were my brothers, but no longer.
They were my brothers, but no longer. So there were a few Marines from Traitor Legions who basically, as soon as they found out that their Primarch and their fellow brother Marines had turned traitor, they were like, fuck that. I fought for the Emperor. A lot of them were Terran born, meaning that they were born on Earth and not from the planets that the Primarchs came from. So there was already a political schism between them and some of the newer Marines that came from the planets of the Primarchs. And there were like wholesale political purges in many of the legions. And there were pockets of Space Marines that went completely unaddressed because they had been like left behind as a part of like a small dispatched unit for this conquest or that conquest. And when Traitor Legions kind of, swore their loyalty to Horus, this actually created an entire breed of renegade Space Marine who alternatively, like, they didn't want to necessarily go full-throatedly for the Chaos Powers or their Traitor Primarchs, but also found themselves, for one reason or another, unable to serve the Imperium still. So whether that they were declared traitors and would be hunted down, so they couldn't turn themselves into the Imperium because they would be slaughtered, or they just didn't want to, and they carved out, pirate empires or world for themselves, just because in the chaos it was possible for them to do so, and their survival was not guaranteed. Which is actually interesting, thinking about Space Marines being selfish, because as far as we know, they're asexual. They do not have sexual drives. So for them to kind of give into the drive for survival individually, and then to, like, I don't know, fill their lives with like trinkets or, weird poisons or drugs or anything like that. It's actually interesting to think about renegade Space Marines serving themselves, but we'll move on.
Don't let them kill my baby!
Don't let them kill my baby! Ah! These are Cataphracti Terminators. It's an older pattern of Terminator armor, very hard to crack. And, these are combi bolters, the modern equivalent of a storm bolter, and they have, power fists. Basically just upgraded armor that's really hard to crack that allows you to wade into bolter and heavy weapons fire and still dominate the battlefield. But when you're facing Space Marine on Space Marine, you're kind of screwed. So,
Your fight is with me, traitor. War Dog! Come on, then, Gilliman's little curs!
It's actually a pretty cool animation sequence. I know the artist got a lot of criticism just because the animation was just like a little bit, you know, jumpy, and we didn't get to see the action details as much as other competing art projects. But one of the things that he did that I am really grateful for is basically absolutely fucking nailing the aesthetic. So whether that was, you know, the buildings, the colonnades, the, you know, the Ultramarines or Space Romans, so they kind of built that architecture everywhere they went, whether that was the Praetor armor or the Horus Heresy helmets that we're going to see later on, the aesthetics of the Cataphracti Terminator armor, the aesthetics of the Combi Bolter, the Raptors, all that kind of stuff. All of this is very quickly, or not very quickly, it's very accurately married to descriptions in the books. It's very accurately married to the miniatures that exist for the Horus Heresy tabletop game and the Warhammer 40,000 tabletop game. It's very married to the lore itself, as far as like expanded Wikipedias and lexicanums. So whatever it doesn't have in the very like well-flowing animations of other creators, it does make up for in aesthetic, lore accuracy, and kind of like rule of cool. So shout out to the creator for this.
Take me from my home, and I will sail to the stars of your empire.
And we are seeing the Ultramarines losing, getting butchered, trying to defend civilians. It's not working. That Marine was already missing an arm, stepped in front of a traitor Marine, hit him with a battle axe, but, you know, World Eaters are renowned melee fighters, so he's ultimately overpowered and killed. And that's kind of what this butchery represents, is like the collapse of what could have been. What could the Imperium have been if Horus had not turned traitor? If he had allowed himself to die? Because that was ultimately what Magnus the Red, Horus was on the verge of death, poisoned by a weapon of Nurgle, and he was basically told by one of his brothers, like, if you want to salvage the Imperium, if you want to salvage your dad's project, you need to die. And Horus, being an egotist and being a little bit narcissistic and a little bit bitter towards his father, and being granted visions of the Imperium to come that would forget him and maybe forget some of the sacrifices of his brothers, ruled by sycophants and and comparative ants to his personal greatness, took insult with the vision that he had and instead accepted the promises of the ruinous powers. And in accepting that promise, he basically birthed this world in which the Imperium tears itself apart. Space Marines fight Space Marines. The angels of the Emperor are turned on the civilian populations that they were meant to create, serve, and protect. And now, you know, hope has been destroyed for what could have been, setting off so far like 11,000 years of darkness.
Empire. I will serve as a son must serve. But let Kulkis stand as I have shaped it, a planet of peace and prosperity. I will kill you where you stand, loyalist scum. Come, meet your death, cousins. Come, meet your death, cousins.
Come meet your death, cousins. And you actually saw a demon-possessed Space Marine stomping one of his former brothers or cousins into the ground.
Rise!
All right, So I believe maybe that like ripped apart Marine that had all the data slates appear in front of him was most likely a Dreadnought, if I'm understanding the animation correctly. The lumbering feels a little inefficient, but it conveys the mass of a Contemptor Dreadnought, and a Contemptor Dreadnought basically being a Horus Heresy era, slightly larger version of a Dreadnought that does carry very powerful weaponry. And yeah, let's just see what he does to some traitors and to some loyalists. And then that word bearer, or not word bearer, that World Eater Dreadnought charging across the battlefield with nothing but you know, claws to tear things apart. It's terrifying. Like, obviously this is an animated universe, but if you actually thought about like a 20 or 30 foot tall mechanical monstrosity sprinting across a battlefield in order to wreck you, even if you're a 7 foot tall genetically engineered super space warrior in power armor, if you had the capacity to shoot yourself, you might. and this is the maybe the tragedy of the project not continuing. I hope it doesn't stay indefinitely suspended, but if you look at the aesthetic, it's very clearly nailed. This Ultramarine helmet, these helmets are all buyable through Games Workshop or Forge World. The Gladius in the background is basically representative of the Ultramarines and their aesthetic. The Eagles of the Imperium, the Bolts of the Imperium. Just a lot of love went into getting the lore correct, and I think that's the power of Death of Hope as a series. Unfortunately, a shorter lived series, if I understand the production issues correctly. But you could tell that the animator, who was again I think one person, poured in a lot of love and care into the aesthetic. So yeah. So that's pretty much it. Next week, we're kind of running lower on content, but at the same time, we can expand. I know I want to show you guys Halo Landfall, which is a IRL Halo series. Wouldn't mind doing some Halo cinematics or some StarCraft cinematics or some you know, some other cinematics that are tangentially related, like the Battlefleet Gothic cinematics that might actually get us into the Navy and kind of all the things that they do. And yeah, there's just like a lot to talk about, a lot of really cool stuff related to the lore, but kind of a short amount of art in order to do it. Sodaz does have a new video called Deploy, but I'm hoping that's a teaser for the upcoming project. But maybe we'll do Deploy, because there is actually, while maybe short on action, there is a lot of like really cool details that I enjoy about that piece as well. So, my name is Connor. This is Counterpoints. Please like, share, subscribe, dislike, all that YouTube nonsense. I am primarily a political junkie, so I do political panel debates. You can go check those out. I do political rants, counter rants. You can check those out, where I just yell into the void about whatever I'm thinking about that week. I do breakdowns on law enforcement issues, both artistic and real. I do breakdowns on military stuff, artistic and real. So click around. You'll find something you like. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye.